War doesn't always announce itself with explosions. Sometimes it arrives quietly in the dead of night, carried by mistakes, miscalculations, and overconfidence. On this night, 2030 local time, the Caribbean was calm. Too calm. Out of the darkness, a massive silhouette slid south of Puerto Rico. The USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group moved like a silent wall of steel, decks darkened, radar low, cruising at over 18 knots. To anyone watching from the shore or from a distance, it looked like a routine transit, but this was far from ordinary. This was the largest U.S. naval presence in Latin American waters since the late Cold War, a subtle statement of dominance executed with surgical precision. Along the Venezuelan coast, the picture that appeared on old, aging radars was dangerously incomplete. What should have been a massive carrier strike group spanning miles was compressed into a single, isolated return. A lone destroyer, that single misread would set the stage for a confrontation that could have escalated into a global warning. Within minutes, Venezuelan commanders acted. 6 fast patrol boats roared out of port, their engines screaming, cutting through the water in a deadly arrowhead formation. Their target, what they believed was one solitary U.S. warship. Their goal, to pressure, intimidate, and make a political statement. But they had chosen the wrong opponent. As the patrol boats raced forward, the Ford's bridge remained calm. Red lighting bathed the consoles as sailors went about routine checks, unaware to the casual eye that every movement around them was being tracked, measured, and anticipated. Radar operators watched as the 6 patrol boats tightened their formation. Speed, angle, spacing, everything was deliberate. This wasn't casual patrol. This was an attack geometry designed to force a reaction. At 20 nautical miles, the first critical threshold appeared. The Ford could not maneuver sharply at this speed. Every adjustment would be slow, every turn obvious. At 15 nautical miles, the stakes became real. The patrol boats held their line, relentless, their arrowhead pointed straight at the carrier strike group. Hesitation on their part could have signaled caution. On the American side, discipline was the weapon. The USS Thomas Hudner, positioned on the forward quarter, moved into a soft block, cutting across the intercept line. No aggression, no provocation, just precise positioning. The patrol boats surged, slicing waves at speeds exceeding 35 knots. Above, 2 MH-60R Seahawks lifted silently into overwatch, their infrared sensors painting the approaching vessels in detail invisible to the naked eye. Speed spikes, bearing changes, formation discipline, everything streamed into the Combat Information Center. Every move the Venezuelan boats made was catalogued, analyzed, and turned into tactical advantage. The tension grew as the distance shrank. Weapons remained passive. The Mark 45 gun slowly rotated just enough to be visible, not threatening. The Soyuz activated in passive tracking mode. The U.S. posture remained calm, deliberate, unwavering. The carrier's course was non-negotiable. Every fraction of a degree counted. Every reaction was intentional. The arrowhead pressed closer, the geometry tightening into what sailors call the gray zone, a space so narrow that errors become catastrophic. Less than 1,000 yards remained between the lead patrol boat and the destroyer. Any misstep could trigger a deadly chain reaction, and yet the American formation did not flinch. No course change, no escalation, nothing but control. Then, almost imperceptibly, the Venezuelan formation began to falter. Engines slowed slightly, bow angles shifted by mere fractions, wakes widened, breaking the razor-sharp geometry that had driven toward confrontation. Hesitation appeared in a formation that had seemed unstoppable. In silence, the United States had forced the decision without firing a single shot. The arrowhead collapsed. Patrol boats adjusted course, moving back toward home waters, their aggressive posture dissolved. From above, Seahawks documented every subtle movement. From the sea, the Hudner maintained its block, projecting dominance without aggression. The Ford continued its course, untouched, unthreatened, a symbol of calculated power. No alarms, no radio warnings, no weapons fired, yet the lesson was clear. Presence, composure, and discipline had outweighed speed, intimidation, and political posturing. Venezuela had gambled and lost. The U.S. had demonstrated dominance not through firepower, but through strategy, patience, and control. For analysts and sailors alike, this encounter became a textbook lesson in modern naval warfare. Misreads, overconfidence, and poor situational awareness can escalate local moves into global crises in a matter of seconds. But restraint, coupled with superior surveillance, can neutralize threats before they become real. The invisible network of sensors, aircraft, and escorts had turned the night into a chessboard where every move was anticipated and every potential escalation was neutralized before it could unfold. By the time the patrol boats returned to Venezuelan waters, the carrier strike group remained on its original path. Discipline had won where speed and aggression had failed. The encounter left no headlines, no explosions, and no casualties, but its strategic impact was undeniable. In a single, silent confrontation, the U.S. Navy had rewritten the rules of engagement, proving that dominance at sea is as much about patience and awareness as it is about weapons. The Caribbean returned to its deceptive calm. Civilian traffic continued, unaware of how close a local miscalculation had come to sparking an international incident. But beneath the waves, in the data streams and tactical plots, a lesson had been recorded for anyone daring to challenge the wrong navy. Misread one signal, underestimate one formation, and the consequences could be catastrophic. Power in the modern age is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers through geometry, discipline, and the silent orchestration of forces. And on this night, the U.S. Navy whispered loudly enough to ensure that nobody doubted who controlled the Caribbean. War at sea doesn't always announce itself with fire. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in a moment of overconfidence, a single misread, or a gamble gone wrong. On this night, the Caribbean was calm, almost serene. But beneath that calm, tension brewed like a storm ready to break. At 2030 local time, a massive shape emerged from darkness south of Puerto Rico. The USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group moved like a wall of steel, stealthy, disciplined, maintaining over 18 knots. Decks dark, radar minimized, the formation cut through the water silently, giving nothing away. To the untrained observer, it appeared routine, a simple naval transit. But this was far from ordinary. This was the largest U.S. naval presence in Latin American waters since the Cold War, a calculated, quiet projection of power. Along the Venezuelan coast, aging radar systems detected the approach, but their view was distorted. What was truly a massive carrier strike group, spanning miles and dozens of vessels, was compressed into a single return, a solitary destroyer. Misinterpretation became dangerous in an instant. Venezuelan commanders, acting on this faulty information, launched 6 fast patrol boats into the night, engines screaming, cutting through the black water at speeds exceeding 30 knots. Their intent was clear: intercept, intimidate, assert control, all based on the illusion of strength. The American formation remained calm. Inside the bridge of the Ford, red lighting illuminated consoles as sailors went about routine operations. The carrier appeared steady, unflustered, but beneath that calm, tactical awareness sharpened. Radar operators tracked the approaching boats, noting their speed, angles, and formation. The 6 vessels formed an arrowhead pattern, precise, coordinated, aggressive. This wasn't a casual approach. It was a direct challenge, a calculated move that demanded an immediate response. At 20 nautical miles, the first critical threshold passed. The carrier could not turn sharply or accelerate in time to avoid a potential collision. By 15 nautical miles, the situation became urgent. Every decision, every adjustment mattered. The lead patrol boat maintained its center line while the others flanked perfectly. Hesitation from the Venezuelans could have signaled caution, aggression, or miscalculation. On the U.S. side, discipline would be the ultimate weapon. The USS Thomas Hudner, positioned at the forward quarter, executed a textbook soft block. Without firing a weapon or signaling aggression, it moved into the intercept line, cutting across the Venezuelan formation with surgical precision. The message was clear: no breach would occur. Above, two MH-60R Seahawks lifted into overwatch. Their infrared pods and sensors illuminated the night, capturing every engine spike, wake pattern, and subtle adjustment in the approaching formation. Nothing went unnoticed. As the boats closed in, the geometry tightened. Less than 10 nautical miles separated the formations. Speed alone could no longer dictate the encounter. Any attempt to break through the soft block would expose the boats to overwhelming response. Any misstep in direction could escalate the situation, and yet the Venezuelans pressed on, confident in their numerical advantage and the illusion of the solitary destroyer ahead. Inside the Hudner, watch teams tracked every nuance. Passive sensors, sonar, and infrared feeds fed the tactical picture. The Mark 45 gun slowly rotated, deliberately aimed within sight, but not pointed as if to fire. The Sioux remained in passive tracking mode. Every component of the American formation communicated discipline, control, and readiness without aggression. The arrowhead pattern pressed tighter, entering the so-called gray zone. This space is a crucible of naval tension, too close for error, too dangerous for hesitation. Less than 1,000 yards remained between lead boat and destroyer. Reactions had to be instantaneous. Every fraction of movement carried massive weight. Then, almost imperceptibly, change came, engines slowed. Bow angles shifted, wakes widened, the once rigid arrowhead softened, hesitation emerged. The Venezuelans unknowingly had stepped into a silent trap. They had approached a formation disciplined enough to neutralize risk without firing a shot. Observation, composure, and positioning had turned aggression into retreat. The arrowhead began to collapse. Boats adjusted course, spacing widened. From the air, the Seahawks documented every movement with precision. The Hudner maintained its block, the carrier maintained speed. Every sensor, every system projected a single message. Dominance through discipline, no alarms, no radio calls, no shots fired, and yet the lesson was unmistakable. Raw aggression cannot overcome strategy, patience, and presence. Miscalculation almost escalated into crisis, but restraint and tactical mastery prevented it. The Venezuelan patrol boats, driven to the edge, had no choice but to back off. The U.S. formation had held the line with unyielding resolve. By the time the boats returned to Venezuelan waters, the carrier strike group continued on its original course, unthreatened and unaltered. The encounter left no explosions, no casualties, no headlines. But its implications were profound. The standoff demonstrated that modern naval power is not only about firepower, it's about control, patience, situational awareness, and psychological dominance. This encounter would become a case study for naval analysts, a reminder that even small miscalculations can escalate into global incidents if misread by those in positions of power. And yet, in the hands of a disciplined formation, restraint becomes the most potent weapon. Presence becomes authority, silence becomes dominance. The Caribbean returned to its deceptive calm. Ships and fishing vessels moved without interruption. Above and below the waves, the data was collected, analyzed, and recorded. A silent lesson had been taught. Challenge the wrong formation, misread the situation, and the consequences can be immediate, irreversible, and unavoidable. In the end, power does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers through geometry, positioning, and composure. Sometimes the strongest response is silence. And on this night, the U.S. Navy whispered so clearly that any observer understood who controlled the Caribbean, who dictated the rules, and who would never yield under miscalculation. The lesson was simple. In modern naval warfare, dominance is not measured by who fires first, but by who holds position, maintains discipline, and controls the gray zone. Every small decision matters. Every hesitation can be fatal. And in the Caribbean, one misread radar signature almost became history had the Americans not shown that restraint, composure, and tactical awareness are, in themselves, weapons more powerful than guns or missiles. War doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, and in that whisper lies absolute control. Off the Venezuelan coast, the aged submarine Sabalo slipped from port under the cover of darkness, its crew confident in stealth and secrecy. They believed invisibility protected them. They were wrong. 300 miles from shore, the Caribbean seemed tranquil. Waves reflected moonlight, but beneath the calm, a hidden network of sensors, satellites, and submarines lay in wait. Every hum, every valve, every torpedo tube flooded was being tracked in real time. This was not paranoia. It was decades of preparation, passive acoustic arrays, sonobuoys, aerial patrols, and undersea sensors, upgraded continually since the Cold War. The ocean itself had become a theater of observation where nothing moved undetected. The Sabalo was refitted enough to leave port but remained a relic. Its crew, politically motivated and desperate, thought themselves hunters. In reality, they were prey. As it descended into the water, the mechanical signatures of its engines, pumps, and periscopes broadcast a map of intent to unseen observers. Every crew roster, weapon readiness, and endurance estimate had already been catalogued. Ahead, Virginia, Class U.S. submarines patrolled silently. Above, P-8 Poseidons dropped sonobuoys in precise grids. Every splash of these devices, invisible to the naked eye, helped form a cage around the Sabalo. It was a trap the crew would never see, a lesson in modern deterrence executed without aggression. The target was the USS Gerald R. Ford. From the carrier deck, nothing appeared unusual. Yet the Sabalo approached a fortress of sensors, destroyers, submarines, and aircraft, 19 sonar arrays forming a network of unbroken observation. Every adjustment of the submarine, every flooded torpedo tube was logged, analyzed, and classified. 90 seconds to readiness became 90 seconds to confrontation. Then came the first echo, a single sonar ping from the USS Mississippi. Not a warning, not an attack, but a simple message, "We see you." That whisper carried more weight than any missile. The crew of the Sabalo faced a choice: press forward blindly or retreat under observation. They hesitated. This is the essence of modern naval warfare, restraint, not destruction. The Sabalo could have fired. Its torpedoes could have provoked catastrophe, but the orchestration of the U.S. fleet transformed observation into deterrence. No shot was fired, no lives were lost. And yet, the message was absolute. Every action is being watched, every decision anticipated, every consequence visible before it can unfold. As the submarine reversed course, the Ford and its strike group maintained silent dominance. Calm on the surface, chaos below every sonar ping, engine hum, and mechanical adjustment of the Sabalo was mapped like lines on a blueprint. In this environment, confidence met reality, desperation met discipline, and political gambits collided with technological evolution. The Caribbean returned to deceptive calm. Fishermen crossed paths with cargo ships. Above water, all seemed normal. Below, a lesson in invisible power had been enforced. Modern naval warfare is not about who fires first. It is about who sees first, who understands first, and who acts decisively through observation. The U.S. demonstrated that dominance doesn't require explosions. It doesn't require destruction. It requires patience, discipline, and absolute situational awareness. One silent sonar ping, one networked sensor, one calculated movement had prevented an engagement that could have spiraled into disaster. As the Sabalo slipped toward port, its crew unaware of how close they had come to catastrophe, NATO forces continued their watch, unrelenting and invisible. Control had been demonstrated, dominance quietly enforced. The submarine's mission, its political gamble, dissolved under observation. This encounter also highlighted the ocean itself as a battlefield. Every fiber optic cable, every economic artery passing beneath the Caribbean is part of a network that relies on uninterrupted observation. The submarine's presence in these waters wasn't just a challenge to a carrier. It was a test of global awareness, of control through discipline and foresight. High above, P-8 Poseidons maintained overwatch, their infrared sensors recording every movement. Below, silent submarines and sonar arrays logged vibrations, engine pulses, and propeller hums. Nothing escaped detection. The crew of the Sabalo, believing they were stealthy, had become an open book. Attempts at intimidation followed. Green lasers cut across decks. Mechanical noises and deck operations increased, an effort to create a false sense of threat, but NATO forces remained calm. Stability became the weapon. Observation became control. Physics replaced missiles. Precision replaced aggression. Eventually, the mission collapsed. The submersible twisted awkwardly, constrained by reality and superior awareness. Orders changed from progression to recovery. Every movement, every adjustment was catalogued. No shots fired, no damage inflicted. Yet the outcome was decisive. The lesson, restraint backed by technology and patience, can be more lethal than the sharpest torpedo. The Sabalo retreated. Silence reigned. The U.S. fleet continued its mission, maintaining authority without announcing it. Global observers may never know the standoff occurred. Yet for those involved, the lesson was profound. Visibility is control, silence is power, and restraint can enforce dominance more effectively than force. Modern warfare is now a battle of observation, anticipation, and calculated patience. Missteps can be fatal. Restraint is the ultimate weapon. The Sabalo's near attack became a study in deterrence. Every mechanical signature, every engine pulse, every tactical decision had been observed, processed, and nullified before it could threaten escalation. In the Caribbean, dominance doesn't require noise. It doesn't require explosions. It exists quietly, invisibly, and absolutely. One submarine nearly triggered a crisis. One network of sensors, disciplined ships, and aerial surveillance neutralized it without a single shot fired. The message was clear to every adversary: any movement in these waters is seen, every decision is recorded, and miscalculation carries consequences. Power in modern naval warfare is measured not by destruction but by control. By restraint, by the ability to enforce dominance silently, consistently, and undeniably. The Sabalo's retreat reinforced this principle. To test some ships is to reveal your own vulnerabilities. The Caribbean returned to calm. Above, life carried on. Below, sensors hummed silently, recording history in signals, pings, and data. A lesson in invisible power had been delivered. For modern naval forces, the principle is unchanged. Visibility is authority, observation is weaponized, and restraint is the ultimate show of strength. In this standoff, war didn't roar, it whispered. And in that whisper, absolute control was enforced.